Hi, everybody. Welcome back to the Everyday Night. I'm Joe.
And I'm Jeff.
And tonight we are talking about the art of the thank you, kind of a follow-up to the art of the apology, which we did our previous episode. And this is about how to say thank you and when and the circumstances and the methods and all of that. So, and even the reason to say thank you.
Right. And when thank you is appropriate and when it is not, if ever. But
thank you for that. I appreciate the comment.
You're welcome.
So before we begin, Jeff, do you have a beverage nearby that you are partaking of?
Of course, I have a beverage that is de rigueur for these little meetings of ours. I have what is a delightful little middle shelf bourbon called Bearcat.
Okay.
Which is, it's a flavored bourbon with a little bit of spice and just a tiny hint of orange peel. It's a fairly light color. And it's probably got some melted ice in there now, but it's a very nice straight sipping whiskey.
Nice.
And yourself?
Oh, yes, of course. I have a glass of
half a glass.
A minute. There it is. There's the rest of the glass of Meiomi Pinot Noir. Very tasty, very accessible, very affordable. Very widely available Pinot Noir. That's good. It's a good drink with dinner, which we just had a dinner that this paired very well with. So here's to you.
Oh, cheers.
Good.
I like the tulip shape of your glass and think it probably maintains the bouquet very well.
And these are, nice but fairly inexpensive set of glasses we found that do really well with a variety of wines. Every different kind of wine has a different shape of glass that enhances it best, and this is a very good general all-purpose. It's got a large enough bowl. The tulip shape seems to enhance the aromas. It's so it's a good general all-purpose glass, and half of it disappears.
Brings whole new meaning to the question of what is the glass half full or half empty?
Well, later this evening it will be completely empty.
So on to thank yous.
Yes. I did consult Miss Manners' heavyweight tome, The Guide to Excruciatingly Correct Behavior. And the copyright on this, the original copyright 1979, then it was published 1991. So it's been updated. However, and there may be a newer edition. But
well, I wonder if there's if it's 91 was the last update, I wonder if there's an internet version.
Well, and that's what I was wondering, and I haven't gone out to get another updated volume, which I suppose I should replace this. But
you need to get another etiquette grimoire.
Yes, but I want one that's leather bound and tooled and there's wisps of smoke rising from the corners. So the because it's not an internet, it doesn't include the internet clearly with its publication date. So there are things in modern life, and obviously we talk about the application of chivalric virtues to modern life. There are things that aren't in there. And so I was thinking about this, and I have a couple of rules that I use.
Only a couple?
It's more than a couple.
Okay,
Um,
I believe
and
that.
one of them is actually comes from my mother,
As
and
so much of your wisdom does.
so much from my mom and dad. The saying, the older I get, the smarter my parents were,
Mhm.
seems to have held true. But my mother said, thank people as soon as possible. And this was often in the context, as soon as possible after the thing. And this was in context of receiving a gift. And and if somebody gives you a gift, you should write a thank you letter. And and you should do it as soon as possible. And the reasoning is it's not only polite to do that, courteous to do that, but the sooner you thank someone in writing for the gift that they sent you, the less you have to write because they know what
Interesting.
you're thanking them for. You don't have to remind them of the circumstance or the gift. And I used to, my mother made a deal with me when I was a kid. I was very particular about my crayons. Um,
I find that not even a little bit surprising.
they, as I explained when I was about 6, I think, they have to have the right balance of pigment and binder to be
Wax, you mean?
friable and stick and so on. And my mother made a deal with me that when my relatives gave me the really cheap crayons,
The ones like you got at the Big Boy?
yes, that I should say thank you and write them a thank you letter, and she would replace those crayons with the good ones, Crayolas, of course.
Of course.
The
Well,
Neat Plus
they were
Ultra,
the universal crayon of our
yes,
youth.
and not praying crayons, inferior brand. But so it was write a letter and write it as soon as possible after the gift. And this held true for any kind of occasion, birthdays or anything where you might get a gift. Now, Miss Manners in her book was
Wait,
asked.
before you
Yeah,
get to that, I think there's an additional advantage to saying thank you, writing a thank you note, if that's what you're doing, as soon as you can. It also, the feeling of getting that gift or that whatever it was that you're thanking for is still fresh with you, and is your whatever emotions you may have that is leading you to gratitude are more in the forefront of your mind.
I think that makes sense too. That it's and but even if you get a gift that is crappy crayons, and I'll use crappy crayons as a stand-in for
Sure.
any kind of gift.
Well, you can still thank them. You can still
Thank them
express
for
the gratitude,
yes. Thank them for
the
thinking
thought.
of you.
Yeah.
Thank them for what intending well. Thank them for what they gave you. And she does give an example in her book of someone, a newly married couple, the bride in particular, who wrote a thank you note saying, thank you so much for the, I don't remember, a toaster or blender or something. Since we've gotten 6 of them, we're going to return yours for something else. And thank you very much. I hope you don't mind. And Miss Manners correctly said, don't do that.
No.
Just thank them for the gift. Keep one. You can exchange the others, but they won't know, which just, thank them for it. And don't qualify it. Don't explain that. Just thank them. And that really is related to the idea of what's the proper response to a compliment. Thank you. Not, hey, I like what you're wearing today. Oh, this old thing, it's nothing. I threw. Don't demean the compliment. Don't demean the other person by poo-pooing
Right.
their their gift of a compliment, because a compliment is a gift as well.
Well,
But
in some ways, the self-deprecating is kind of a flex too, right? I mean,
yeah,
like, this old thing. Oh, I just threw it on, that, I mean, then that's become sort of a cliche and a joke that someone who dresses themselves fabulously for an occasion and someone compliments them and it's this old thing, right?
yeah.
I
But
mean, that's
if somebody is, and that's just an example, but somebody is, if they're doing a humble brag kind of
yeah,
thing,
right.
yeah, don't, just be genuine. Don't put that in. If somebody's being nice, somebody's complimenting you, thank them. Which is, if somebody is, and a note there though, is that people will sometimes disguise an insult as a compliment. So
Yeah,
a backhanded compliment. Wow, you look much better today than you did yesterday. Wow, your hair isn't a mess for once. Or, well, that's, the person
Yeah.
is not complimenting you. They're disguising an insult as a compliment. And
Right. You can
and
still, and in the circumstance like that, you can still say thank you.
yes,
And in fact, sometimes that will completely deflate anybody who is trying to insult you by saying, why, thank you.
yes,
Just leaving it.
leave it at that. Yeah, yeah. Don't get drawn into pigeon chess. The never play never play chess with a pigeon, because it just kicks all the pieces over and craps on the board.
Craps on the board.
Yeah.
Yep.
So, but there's another point in that I think you should thank people in the means, or one level more personal, in which the favor or gift or compliment was given.
Yes.
So
Okay.
if somebody hands you a gift, you can say thank you, but I think following up with a note or a letter is another level of appreciation.
Yes.
So, and again, I differ with Miss Manners in that she was asked about using thank you cards that have thank you embossed, usually in gold on the cover. And these are very commonly used for weddings and bar mitzvahs and other things to thank people. And she said, never, I would use one of those over my dead body, because if you don't have the wherewithal to write the words thank you in a proper letter, you shouldn't get a gift. I thought, well,
and that is definitely a flex.
effing da. I think that
Well, I think there's a difference between, giving, if you're thanking someone for an sort of an expected gift, like a birthday or a wedding or something like that, they know that you're sending out a mass of thank yous, and
right.
Using a card that says thank you is perfectly acceptable. If you're thanking someone for an individual, personal, unlooked for gift or service or whatever, I think that has a little more weight. That her advice has a little more weight. That just writing a letter that says thank you,
right,
rather than pulling a card out of the deck to scribble a note inside.
Which also raises the question: should a letter be handwritten, or is it acceptable to use one of these newfangled typewriter machines? Not according to Miss Manners, it should be written out in longhand. I write letters. When I write letters, I'll write them on the computer.
Yeah. Allows you to compose.
Print them out, sign them personally, and send them. And I think that's acceptable.
I should think. I mean, you took the time to compose the letter, whether
Right.
or not you wrote it in longhand. I mean, and what about okay, so Miss Manners, if this was in 91, email was around, but just barely.
Just barely.
So, is an emailed thank you sufficient? Are we going to look in the index for email?
I'm going to look in the index for email and see if there is no entry for email
Okay.
in the index.
Well, yeah. Okay, then.
So, and to be fair, I have not consulted a newer volume than this. You know, I was waiting until, you know, we can send telepathic messages and to see what she says the correct form of a telepathic thank you is. But
Well, I don't think you actually need to say thank you when we're all telepathic, we're all connected by our implants. You can simply express the emotion of gratitude directly.
there we go.
When I get my empath chip, you know, with my booster shot, that's what I'm hoping.
So when they go past the location chip, right?
Yeah, yeah. They
So-
don't want to know just what I'm doing. They want to know how I feel about it.
Yeah. So I do think that email is appropriate. I mean, if you're, and I also have what I think of as a hierarchy of thanks,
Yes.
of means of thanks. But in any event, whatever means you are thanking someone by, through whatever medium of communication, you should explain what you're thanking them for. It can be very brief. This, again, the sooner after the thanks, the briefer it can
Right.
be, but you should explain. When I was a kid and faced with the daunting idea of writing lots of thank yous or thank yous to relatives who I didn't really know, I wrote poetry. It was really bad poetry, very simple ABAB poetry, and and sent that. My relatives were thrilled. They thought it was just so personal and so wonderful. And for me, it was easier than having to actually write something.
Right. Sure.
It was easier to do that. So that was my way of dealing with that. So I think that in-person thanks is the first thing. You can thank somebody in person for what they've done, what they've given you, what they've said, something, particularly if somebody compliments you in person, you thank them in person, ideally. Right. If somebody gives you something or sends you something, if they give you something, hand you something, thank them. You can thank them in person, but follow up with a note.
I think that's possible. Yes.
Yeah. If somebody, you can also, if somebody sends you a gift, you can call them to thank them.
Sure.
People actually use their devices as phones.
Yeah, audio communication.
Actually, do you know this little mobile computer, you can actually call people?
I know. You can even now you can, it's like Dick Tracy. You can actually have a video chat with them.
Yes.
It's almost like being in person.
Yes.
We've truly reached the 1930s now.
Yeah, complete with everything else that went on.
Yeah.
So I think a personal letter is very meaningful. People receive a personal letter. Now, I know that some people and some families have a tradition of sending out an end of the year update letter to lots of people along with a holiday card. This can be nice, or this can be way oversharing. And I've gotten a few of those.
Oh, so, yeah.
Oh, I didn't really need to know every detail of all of that.
And frankly, the level for me, the level of oversharing is pretty low. Like
Yeah,
there's
yeah,
a I think you got to read your audience a little bit, and how much does this person really care about how my what sicknesses my children had this year?
yeah.
It's
I don't. If you are keeping a daily diary, write it all down and publish it posthumously, like the Diary of Alexander Pepys, or I think it was Pepys. Um, that was a long time ago. I read that. Or the letters of
well, I
whatever.
think there's a whole, I mean, this is, we're getting a little bit off track here, but the 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 idea to me, the concept that people care what, particularly that what I'm doing at any given moment, what I'm eating, where I am, who I'm doing it with. The social media, the whole social media phenomenon, I think has led people to the false idea that people give a shit what you're doing at any given time. And look what a cool life I'm living has become this sort of, I don't know. I'm not even sure what to call it. It's a,
Well,
and people pretending and faking their lives
yeah.
on
Now,
these.
there's several different things going on. One is that some people use social media simply to vent about issues and their day. And a friend of mine on Facebook set up a closed group he just called Rant, and you can just post there a rant about anything, and
Right.
it's cathartic. And
Sure.
I've been down to post some of the, you can always tell who's a teacher, because at the end of the semester there are all kinds of posts about
Yeah.
unbelievable stuff that they've had to read.
Right. Or excuses that they've heard, or
Yeah,
yeah,
but
that's one
but
thing.
some of it is narcissism magnified to a larger audience, but mostly I think it is, hey, I'm having this experience, I want to share it where I want, either because I'm happy and I want to share that, or I need positive feedback from people or something. I think
But
there's
see, that's
some
that I get that. I get that where there is this is an important incident in my life, or I feel like I'm struggling with something, or, you know, and I miss, I don't have a community at immediate hand, right? So I'm going to reach out electronically to what community I have to help me get through this. That's different. I'm talking about pet videos, food, children just being children. I mean, if your kid is wrestling a cobra in the backyard, send that video. But if they're just holding on to the edge of the swing and trying to not fall down, I could pass on that one.
If your kid is wrestling a cobra in the backyard, what the hell are you doing filming it?
Well, it's all
Video
about likes, man. It's
and
the
not
likes.
going out there and intervening.
How are you going to pay for their education if you're not getting them likes?
So, but
Well, but that's my,
if
but you see what I mean?
I do
You
see,
understand my point.
and I think it's easy to distinguish between the people who are sharing, oversharing, and being narcissistic.
Yes, it
I
is.
think TikTok, the black hole, the time suck of TikTok is fascinating in that there's good content and there's also the things that appeal to morbid curiosity. But it's like the train wreck you can't look away from, right? But there's also a lot of magnified narcissism.
Oh,
And
yeah.
look at me, look at me, look at me, sort of things. And TikTok, I think, is more rife with that than a lot of other social media. Although Instagram Instagram, Facebook is for old people, right? Instagram and TikTok are for younger people, and self-defined in that way. And Instagram, though, has a negative impact on self-image, according to studies I've seen. So, but if, for example, I get a birthday wishes on my birthday on Facebook,
right?
I thank everybody. I write thank you. They're saying happy birthday. I say thank you. They say happy anniversary. I say thank you. That seems to me to be appropriate. It can, if you cut and paste, it doesn't take a lot of time. You know, it doesn't take, it takes more time than one person spent to wish you a happy birthday in total, but it doesn't take you any more time to say thank you than it took each individual. Doesn't take you more time to individually thank someone than it took them to say happy birthday. It takes you more time in total, depending on how many.
Well, of course, because you're having to say thank you 30 times, and every individual had to say happy birthday once.
Right. So,
this is why I don't have my birthday on Facebook.
I think in-person thanks, a phone call, a personal letter, a thank you card with a personal message, email, and social media. And that's that's roughly the order, the hierarchy, but I'm still thinking about it because there are times when I thank somebody in person and follow up with a note.
Well,
follow up with an email, or or thank somebody on social media. And then if it's more than just a birthday wish, thank them the next time I see them, something like that. So it can you can mix them.
Sure. Well, and we both, I mean, in our medieval pastime, we both reigned as kings, and for us, I mean, and you're getting gifts all the time. Mm-hmm. Every weekend you get a small handful of little gifts or tokens or something, that even if it's a donation to the kingdom and not a gift, not a personal gift, you're getting things. And you probably did, I know I did, that there was a person specifically assigned in your entourage with a little pre-printed card to get all that person's name and contact information and whatever, a description of the thing they gave you, so that you could later write a personal thank you note.
Yes. In fact, I think that my first reign, I was one of the first to actually do that.
Oh.
I had a member of my staff who was designated to make sure they knew who to thank for the gifts. And it's nice to see that it's become a thing.
Well, I designed up a little, quarter page pad of all the information, name, contact information, description of the thing, So
I think that's great. I think that's really good. And I think that's a good way to do it. One of the things I know with, say, wedding gifts, when there's a table of wedding gifts, you want to make sure that, and just a hint to anybody who's getting married, if you have a table for gifts, make sure somebody there has a roll of tape to really tape down the card,
the thank you card,
so it doesn't get separated.
Yeah.
So my recommendation, if you're giving somebody a gift and you have a card on the outside, is also put a card on the inside.
Oh, good idea.
Yeah. But you're going to say,
just a little personal note. No, I was saying about as when we were royalty, that while you had someone gathering that information, you did not delegate the writing of the thank you.
No,
that was something we always did ourselves. There's other things you could delegate to people, but that was one thing we thought could not really be delegated. And that's part of the time you spend those of you, those SCA people that are listening, that is part of the job and part of the time you have to spend when you're royalty, as it's part of the job.
Yeah.
So
People are being nice enough to appreciate what you're doing.
and this is the inverse of the Facebook happy birthday thing, because they put in hours.
Yes.
You can take 5 minutes to fill out a thank you note and send it out. So you mentioned your hierarchy, and you also got here you proposed some rules about what to thank people for, or did we already go through them?
We sort of went through that about thanking somebody as soon as possible in the same means, or at least one level more personal, by which the favor or gift was given, and describe what you're thanking them for.
Right.
And so I think those are pretty simple rules. But it all comes back to the answer to what is the correct response to a compliment.
Yeah. Thank you.
Yeah.
And it's never inappropriate to say thank you.
Right. Yes.
Even to a left-handed, or backhanded compliment, that's, as we said earlier, that's an insult thinly veiled as a compliment, you can still say thank you, because saying thank you is about your character, not theirs.
Mm-hmm. And the proper response to thank you is you're welcome.
You're welcome.
Not, I think that no problem is, there's some, if you're in Jamaica and you thank somebody, or you thank somebody for something and they say, no problem.
No problem, man.
That's fine, because that's their way. That's how people say you're welcome there. And that's perfectly fine. But in a more formal situation, or at least where we are, which isn't necessarily formal, but no problem is not doesn't have the same meaning. It can be, because remember, one of the principles behind etiquette, if not courtesy, is you don't want to make somebody uncomfortable unintentionally.
Right.
And if they thank you for something and you say no problem, it demeans, the same way you're not thanking them, or you're saying non-ironically this old thing, when somebody, no, it's nothing. They're complimenting you, you're saying, no, it's nothing. You're demeaning their compliment. If you say thank you and they say no problem, they're demeaning your thanks. They're saying, hey, what are you thanking me for? It took me no effort. It wasn't, it doesn't, I would have done it for anyone. You're not special. Why are you thanking me? It can be perceived that way. It's not necessarily intended that way. It's intended generally to mean, excuse me, I was glad to do it.
Right. Well, it's not the same thing as saying, you can say, oh, happy to do it.
Yes, that's different than saying no problem. Correct. Because you're saying I was happy to do it. And that is another gift to the person you're giving them. When you're saying, they say thank you, you're saying I was happy to do it. Giving you this thing or this compliment or gift was giving a gift to myself, because it made me happy to do it.
Now there's yes, and that's okay. That's totally legitimate, because you're responding in a way that says, this was a pleasure for me as well. It's my pleasure. Someone says, thank you, my pleasure. That's another fairly formal way.
Yes.
But well, like in a situation like in a retail thing where someone has, this happens in my work all the time, right? Someone comes to you for something, a sign in my case, right? And you design it and you produce it, and they come in to pick it up, and they pick it up and they say, okay, thanks, as they're walking out the door. So in that case, that thanks is just a recognition of the exchange we're making. And saying you're welcome is almost too formal. You're saying our pleasure, if I or me and another person are usually the person that will meet with a customer as they're coming in the door, is just, sometimes I'll say thanks a lot, this is great. And I'll just say, yeah, you bet, like anytime. And the response there is, this is just what we do.
Look forward to seeing you again.
Yeah, that kind of exchange. I don't have to say you're welcome.
Yes,
because that's it would
be well. And this is one of the things that we've talked about a number of times, is how difficult it is to understand the nuance of appropriateness in a given situation. Those social clues. And a lot of times what we talk about are some of the rules around that, but it's really hard to explain that kind of social nuance to people in given situations. I have heard, say, somebody being interviewed on television or radio, and the interviewer, when it's done, will say, thank you. And the person being interviewed will say, thank you.
No, thank you.
Thank you. No, thank you. So it varies from no, thank you to, and thank you for asking me. I rarely hear anyone say, you're welcome. Sometimes I will hear somebody say, you're welcome, I was glad to do it. Or they'll just simply say, my pleasure.
Right. This has been a genuine pleasure.
Yes,
being a little more effusive.
But the thank you, no, thank you, no, thank you, no, after you, no, let's both go together, shall we? Like the two chipmunks, Chip and Dale in the cartoon, right? And their exaggerated formality was a satire of overly formal etiquette in the cartoon. It wasn't something that I think kids got, but it was.
I don't know if it was, I would say that it was extending courtesy to its absurdity.
I'd say etiquette more than, I mean, they were being nice to each other. So, but
I lost you for a second there.
Oh, sorry. They were being nice to each other, but it was more etiquette than courtesy, I think. But
whatever. It's
two old cartoon characters. It doesn't really matter. But I do think I have noticed that it's sort of stuck out, and it's hit my ear when I hear people being interviewed, not being thanked and not saying you're welcome, but doing the thank you in response to somebody saying thank you. And I'm uncertain how I feel about that, because it is thank you for the opportunity. If they say thank you for the opportunity, I think I mean formally it should be you're welcome, thank you for inviting me.
Yes.
Yes. And then the interviewer can say you're welcome, thank you for agreeing to be interviewed. The other person say you're welcome, thank you, I look forward to, and it can just go on like the chipmunks, right?
So, but I think it's certainly, I think, deemed appropriate now. It's saying, thank you for coming on our show. Thank you for having me.
Yes.
And that's appropriate. That is because there's a mutual interest usually served there.
Right.
It's not, I'm giving you this gift of coming on my show, or I'm not giving you this gift by showing up on your show. It's recognizing an exchange, I think. So one saying thank you and one saying you're welcome, it's not as one-sided.
Right. Whereas something like you bet, which you mentioned, would be a little too informal in some way.
In a situation like that, I would agree.
Yeah.
But saying something like my pleasure,
I think
doesn't recognize that they have done something for you as well.
yes,
So I think saying thank you for coming, thank you for having me is a good, for that interview sort of situation, is perfectly appropriate.
yeah, I agree.
Well, what else have we got? Are we gonna, how we're close on our time here. What have we covered this sufficiently? Does everybody
I think
understand?
I think so. Well, I the both the Art of the Apology and the Art of the Thank You episodes are philosophically about social lubrication,
Sure.
things that
Well,
make,
as most courtesy is.
yes, that, and I think that it, let's look at it, maybe look at the other way. If somebody gives you a gift and you don't thank them, then your esteem in their eyes, your renown drops
Mhm.
because you're ungrateful.
Yes.
If you write the letter, as an example in the book, and you say, thank you, we're going to exchange this for something else, you also seem ungrateful. So in terms of, I wouldn't want to put saying thank you to somebody in terms of self-interest, but in terms of self-esteem, it is important. Do
Well,
you
and it's,
value yourself and other people enough to say, please say thank you?
well, that's the thing. It's important. It's important from a societal standpoint, right? Just like you're saying, social lubrication. I mean, there's a lot of grit to be thrown around. We should do whatever we can to smooth the workings,
Yes. And grit, not in the sense of fortitude, moxie, or
No,
chutzpah,
no, I mean
but grit,
sand in the gears.
sand in the gears, that meaning of grit.
Yeah.
Exactly.
So as we go out and be everyday knights, we should be trying to make interactions better and more comfortable and easier for the people around us, and setting an example is as best we can. We all fail from time to time.
Yeah, but we should all endeavor to do what we can, and that's one of the reasons that we talk about these things.
Right. And one of the reasons I enjoy doing this is that it keeps reminding me.
Yes,
There's
exactly.
plenty of times when I've said the witty thing instead of the kind thing, or I've been um, direct when I could have been polite,
Yep.
more polite. And sometimes, everybody goes to this where your mind's on something else, and you're frustrated, or you're dealing with something that people don't understand, and you know what, you may be forcefully polite, where you're, yeah, thanks, and not taking the time or the moment to really say, I appreciate this, or thanks, this has made my day a little better, or I value this thing you've done, thank you, is a pretty small thing. And I've tried to get better about it, and I'm hoping that by doing these things we remind everybody else that keep trying.
Well, it's that it doesn't end. I mean, you
No.
keep doing it. So as we talked about in fortitude, right?
Yeah.
So
Everything's a struggle.
yeah, well, not everything, but yeah, enough things. So I think we've pretty well covered it.
All right.
So thank you for
Oh,
listening.
no, thank you.
Oh no, thank you. After you.
No problem.
Yeah, whatever.
Yeah. Right, exactly.
So,
All right.
yeah,
Then let's close up. Thank
Mhm.
you all again for coming. No need to thank us. We're doing it anyway.
So until next time, be thou
A good night.
and true.